Hi everyone, and welcome to the GitHub video. As I promised in this video, we're just going to kind of cover the basics of GitHub. So a lot of you already know GitHub. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I want to have kind of a scaffolding in place for people who don't know it at all. At least it'll help them get started or point them in the right directions and kind of motivate them to do GitHub. So that's what we're doing in this video. So let's get started and doing it. All right, so here I am on the GitHub webpage. This is my account. It's very easy to set up accounts, so I won't kind of bore you with the details of how to do so. I've been using GitHub for quite a while, so I have a fair number of repositories with all sorts of weird names. But I'm going to go ahead and create a new repository. That's this green button here. And I'll give it some arbitrary name like demo ML22. That sounds 21. I don't know. These arbitrary names. I'm assuming you'll give it a much more meaningful name than that. And this is going to be a repository for my machine learning code. And I'm going to keep it public, meaning anyone can look at the code and use it and download it. I'm going to initialize this repository with a README file so I can keep some notes about what's in there. And I'm going to add a license. I'll add this Apache License 2.0. Apache License 2.0 pretty much gives people the right to use our code even for commercial reasons. It's a good thing. We're just kind of learning how to do stuff. Why not let other people learn from either our mistakes or us figuring stuff out? So that's the license aspect. I'm going to go ahead and create a repository. Okay, so here's our repository. It has now two files in it. One is this license that GitHub created. It's the Apache license in all its legal form, kind of long. And the other thing it had, and the other thing it had was this README file, which looks like that. You'll notice that the README file has this MD suffix. MD stands for Markdown, and what Markdown is, it's kind of a lightweight text formatting language. So by lightweight, I mean it doesn't do all the bells and whistles of something like Microsoft Word would do or Apple Pages, all that fancy stuff, but it gives us some basic, even beyond basic text formatting ability. And its advantage is it writes plain text files, meaning that when you work with Microsoft Word, it's a proprietary text file. You can kind of read it, but it's not that usable to you unless you have Microsoft Word. And if you have Microsoft Word from 1987, let's say you wrote your PhD dissertation way back in 1987. I don't know if Microsoft Word was around then, but let's say it was. That disk you have that as your dissertation is probably completely unreadable today, right? That format has changed. It's a proprietary format. Good luck in looking at your master PhD dissertation, master fiction that you wrote back then, whatever. So contrasting that with Markdown is plain text. It'll always be readable by pretty much anything. So that's Markdown language. We'll see more of it. The cool thing is it's not only used for GitHub documentation, but it's used in Jupyter Notebooks. So when we're working with Jupyter Notebooks, all that text documentation we have in the notebook, so all the stuff other than the code, that's in Markdown. And if you go back to the Inquirium site, all of the Inquirium site is completely also in Markdown. So you can see it's a fairly powerful thing, even though I say it's simplistic, basic, and it uses text files, it actually renders some pretty formatted stuff. So we'll see that in a minute. Sorry for that long excursion into Markdown. Most of the time, we're going to be working with GitHub by using Google Colab. So from Google Colab directly, we'll be communicating with our GitHub repository. We're not going to have our laptop be intervening in that case. Sometimes we're going to want to download our code onto our laptop if we're going to write some documentation, or we want some code that's going to run outside of Google Colab just on our local laptop to demo something. We're going to want that code on our laptop. So let me show you how to do that. So here under code, I'm going to click this button, and Up until about a month ago, I was very old school and would always clone with HTTPS. That was the way I learned years and years ago, and for a long time thought it was cheating to do it any other way. Now I've kind of seen the light. Why not, do something a little bit easier? So I'm going to open with GitHub Desktop. Now, GitHub Desktop is a little program for either Windows or Mac or Linux that just makes it easier to work with synchronizing the version you have on GitHub with that version you have running on your laptop. That's all this program does. At the first time you click it, if you don't have that program, it'll ask you to install it. So here I'm going to clone that repository, GitHub, that demo ML21 I just created, and this shows where it's going to clone it. And now I've created it, and we can see it in the Finder. So let's go ahead and do that. So there I have this README file we created and this license. Now let me talk a little bit more about that README file. Remember I said it was in Markdown. So I'm going to open it in a Markdown editor. There are many of them. I use Typora, Typora. Let me go there. Here I am in Typora. So I'm going to open that file. Just give me a second. There it was, README file, README. And there's what we saw on GitHub, but let's see the kind of the power of Markdown. So let me kind of delete that. And if we want to do that major heading, it's a £, and the title of our document, My Machine Learning Notes. If we wanted to do a secondary heading, I'll just say secondary heading. And that might be something like k-nearest neighbors or something, some note. The third heading, as you can guess, is 3 of those £. I guess it's tertiary, but I'll just say third heading. Using and you can just type regular text to get the regular text output. So we can have headings and regular plain old text. So the plan with KNN is, keep editing here. You can also have bulleted lists that are just simply with 1 asterisk, 0.1. Numbered lists are just putting a number in, like 1. First do this, then this other thing. I don't know. So those are some basic things. You can put a link to something like the Inquirium page. Oops. Yeah. Oh. And then the web address. And you can put in a picture. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You can put in tables. You can put in code blocks. So if you wanted to give some example code, so if you saw something that was really useful to you, you could just paste it here. So define KNN, data labels. Whatever. So we can have that. We can also have math formulas, as we'll see. They show up fine in Typora. They're not going to show up in GitHub. GitHub doesn't have that little feature. But if we do work in Jupyter Notebooks or in other realms, like writing some documentation that we'll use in some other way, these math formulas work fine. They start with $2, and then we type in some code you need to learn. Entropy equal, this isn't a good formula, but I'm just showing you what's possible here. So it does a wide range of things, as we'll see, especially when looking at the Jupyter notebooks, that it's a fairly useful set of formatting features. So let me go ahead and save this. Go back to my, I should point out, here's, as you can see, it's a Markdown language, and it's the Inquirium site, right? This course was designed to help you with necessary skills. Sorry, that was kind of a diversion, but let me go to Google Desktop here. It shows what changes I made to that file automatically, so instantly it says, hey, you made some changes to that file. And here it says I have to add a comment of why I made that change. Pretty useful if multiple people are working on something and you make a change to a file so other people can see why you made it. I'll just say demoed, added demo text for Markdown. And I commit it to the master. What that does is it makes a change to the version that's on your laptop. It'll remember that change. If you need to go back to it, you make some changes, you see you screwed up, you want to go back to that version, you can on your laptop very easily. Now, after I made that change to the laptop, I want to push it, is what the term is called, back to GitHub. So I'm going to push to origin. And that's done. And now if I go back to GitHub, let me just refresh the page. You'll see that it makes the change, and it doesn't, as I mentioned already, it doesn't do that math formula, although other programs will. So even though it's not looking great on GitHub, we'll see that that math formula is extremely useful. I found Markdown really helpful in just taking notes. It's fairly, as you see, there's like a few things to learn. It's like, what's the syntax? But the set of syntax is fairly short, so you can rapidly take notes much faster than any other program I found. So, and what's nice about it is that it's just a text file. You can share it anywhere. You don't need to use Typora. Typora, again, is a Markdown editor that's completely free in Windows, Mac, Linux, everywhere. But there are others, and you can just use a plain text editor like VS Code or whatever your favorite text editor is. So it's a useful thing to know. So that was the basics of GitHub outside of the interface with Google Colab. Next time we'll see how to use it in Google Colab once we are getting involved in coding. But I hope that was a little bit of helpful, as I keep using that phrase, scaffolding, a little bit of extra knowledge of how to use GitHub. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. Thanks. Bye. Take care.